Hello and welcome to Kathy's Corner. My name is Kathy Holt. I am a partner and trainer with Stewardship Resources, LLC. We are quickly coming to the end of the year. Hard to believe, right? That being said, there are year-end forms that businesses, including churches, are required to prepare and submit. Today I will be talking about Form 1099 and 1096. This video will cover what the forms are and who gets one, filing rules, and steps you need to do before submitting the forms. First, let's talk about what are Forms 1099 and 1096. Businesses, including churches, are required to send Form 1099 to vendors that the church has paid for a service, who the IRS recognizes as an independent contractor, and the vendor has been paid $600 or more for the year 2025. Now, the threshold changes to $2,000 in 2026, and from 2027 forward, the threshold is going to be updated annually for inflation. Form 1096 is the transmittal for the Form 1099. Let's talk about due date. January 31st is the due date for both the 1099 and the 1096 forms. Copy A of Form 1099 and Form 1096 go to the IRS, and the vendor copies of Form 1099 go to the vendors. Some filing rules. If the total of W-2 forms plus 1099 forms are 10 or more forms, then you're required to file both the 1099 and the 1096 forms electronically. Otherwise, you have the option of using pre-printed paper forms, or you may file them electronically. Let's talk about who the IRS recognizes as an independent contractor. They are a service provider who has a recognized business doing the service provided to the church, and the church is just one of the service provider's customers. Otherwise, the IRS generally recognizes the service provider as an employee of the church who should receive a W-2 form, not a 1099 form. Are there different types of Form 1099? And the answer is yes, there are actually several types of Form 1099. The two that I will be going over today are the most common forms that the church may need to prepare, and they are the 1099 NEC, which is used for non-employee compensation, and the 1099 miscellaneous for rental vendors. Now here's a picture of Form 1099 NEC, and examples of vendors who should receive this form include, but are not limited to, guest speakers, guest musicians, lawn caretakers, snow removal service, church maintenance providers, custodial services, accountants, consultants, attorneys. And here is a picture of Form 1099 miscellaneous. Examples of vendors who would receive this form include, but are not limited to, rental vendors such as bouncy houses, equipment, and perhaps tent rentals. Are there any exceptions to the requirements to provide 1099 forms? You do not need to send 1099 forms to corporations, except for attorneys. They still get a 1099 form even if they're incorporated. Vendors that were paid with a credit card, they do not need to receive a 1099. An important note here is vendors that were paid with a debit card or an ACH from a bank account are not exceptions. They still get a 1099. Let's talk about some homework you need to do before preparing the 1099 forms. And these are steps that will need to be done whether you are submitting the 1099 forms yourself or outsourcing the work. Step 1, have a signed W-9 form from every 1099 vendor. Now, technically, you should have this signed W-9 or the equivalent before paying the 1099 vendor. And if you do not have the signed W-9, then technically you are required to withhold backup withholding from the vendor payment. I am not going into the details of that in this video. Just make sure you have the signed W-9 or the equivalent. Now, the W-9 form will give you the information needed in preparing the 1099 forms. It will also give you the information to know whether or not this vendor is a service vendor who should receive a 1099 or not. It will have the vendor's name, the vendor's address, the type of vendor. Remember, if they're a corporation, they don't get a 1099 unless they're an attorney. LLC does not mean that the business is automatically incorporated. It could also be a partnership, which would get a 1099. It gives you the tax ID number, whether it be the Social Security number or the federal ID number. Step number 2, depending on your situation, you may need to purchase the pre-printed forms. You can get those at most supply stores. You will not need the paper forms if you will be filing electronically or outsourcing the work. Step 3 will be to review payments to vendors for the year. You need to identify vendors that should receive a 1099 form, the amount to report on the 1099 form, and whether the vendor needs a 1099 NEC or a 1099 miscellaneous form. Step 4, if you are using an accounting program, you will also need to review the list of 1099s that will be printed by that program to make sure the list agrees with your review from step 3. Now, from this point, step 4, you are ready to print the 1099, 1096 forms, e-file the forms, or send the list of 1099 vendors and the needed information to the outsource who will be doing this step for you. Whether you choose to process the 1099 forms on your own or outsource the work, the 1099 forms are an important year-end process that should be done by January 31st of each year. And now is a good time to make sure that you have signed W-9 forms for all your 1099 vendors. Again, the best practice is to have the signed W-9 form before payment is issued to your 1099 vendor. A copy of the screens that I shared with you today are in the resource section below. It has been a pleasure to share this information with you today. As always, if you have questions or need help, please feel free to contact me at the phone number or the email below. Please like, subscribe, and share. Until next time, God bless you and have a fantastic day.